Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
If you were unemployed and had a family to feed, would you do prostitution or sell drugs as a way to make some money? Now, really think about this question. You've got 2 starving children and a stay-at-home wife who can't work because she has to take care for your newest son who's only 3 months old. You can feel the strain of the competitive outside world rushing past in the desperate dash of the marketplace as everyday citizens scramble to secure a paycheck. You're out of a job, with no immediate sign of a job coming, and you can feel the scarcity looming as your bank account balance nears to zero. What are you going to do? You spend a few hours every day in the unemployment line, never getting a call back from an employer. You scrape around for coupons to save as much as you can, and the mischievous thought of slipping a few cans of food into your coat on the way out of the grocery store has tempted your mind more than once. You're at a dead end, but this dead end is a literal one. There is no turning back. There is only poverty sliding into homelessness. So I ask you this question again. If you were unemployed and had a family to feed, would you do prostitution or sell drugs as a way to put some food in your newborn's belly? Now, I can't answer that question for you, but if you ask me, I'd say,
well, of course I would, silly!
You see, you have to realize that the primary reason you would even hesitate to answer that question is that you've been conditioned to view prostitution and selling drugs in a negative way. Your government told you,
say no to drugs,
for so long that now every time you even think of the word marijuana, you instantly think of impoverished ghettos, unproductive hippies, and the traumatizing possibility of being thrown in jail, forced to spend the rest of your days looking over your shoulder for Big Bubba the cellmate. Your religion told you prostitution is immoral, so much that now you instantly associate sex with another human as a crime, even though the only difference between prostitution and pornography, for example, is that there's a cameraman recording the whole thing. The point here is that if you want to solve your unemployment problem, and for that matter the unemployment problem of the majority of this country, you have to consider that the solution to the unemployment problem is right there in front of your face. According to the United Nations, the illegal drug trade industry generated approximately $321 billion in 2003 globally. That's huge. This black market industry alone takes up about 1% of the global GDP, just one industry. And let's not even get started on prostitution. Some estimates put the annual revenues at about $108 billion, which makes sense. Every single human has a penis, or a vagina, excluding the obvious exceptions like transsexuals. Just like the food and water industries are some of the biggest because everyone has to eat and drink, the same applies for the sex industry because almost everyone wants to have sex. So, at the moment, there are 2 primary obstacles between unemployed people and the acquiring of jobs in these 2 industries. These obstacles are 1. The government, and 2. Religious morality. Religious morality is one of the primary drivers that convince people that things like drug and prostitution are immoral, and thus should be illegal. Once the people are convinced these things are immoral, then the government can sweep in and make these things illegal. In this case, that means no more drugs and no more prostitution. Now, we could spend countless days debating whether or not these 2 elements are actually immoral, but I'll sum it up this way. What is more immoral? Not being able to feed your child because you avoided a job in the drug or sex industry? Or choosing to sell drugs or work in prostitution so that you can come home with a meal for your newborn? Remember that all conceptions of morality stem from self-interest. We should only define what is right or wrong based on how it affects conscious individuals. Morality should not be determined because an all-powerful God in the sky demands it. That's not acting morally. That's just cowering under the threat of eternal damnation in hell because a powerful man commanded it. Hitler was a powerful man, and he commanded kill Jews. People obeyed, and people died. Even if there is a God, and a certain religion turns out to be true, then ultimately that religious morality is nothing more than the self-interest of God. You are not doing anything objectively moral. You're just doing what's in the self-interest of God, based on what that God defines as pleasing in accordance with his, her, or its standards. So before you condemn the drug industry, or prostitution, consider that in an ideal transaction, both the consumer and the provider are voluntarily choosing to have their self-interest served. The drug user wants the drug dealer wants the money. The sexually frustrated male wants the sex, the prostitute wants the money. It's a win-win at the time of the transaction, irrespective of what you think about drugs. Now, can drug use and a sexual appetite become dangerous addictions that enslave people? Yes. But so can fast food, alcohol, cigarettes, video games, and horrible sitcoms. Yet these are all legal. The point is that a job in any economy is simply the ability to offer value to someone in exchange for compensation. The jobs problem in this country is not the result of a lack of government regulation or too little inflation or interest rates too low. The jobs problem in this country is a value problem. It's the inability of an unemployed person to find out how their capacity to offer value can be shared with someone else in exchange for compensation. If an intelligent man has come up with a great business plan on how to deliver marijuana right to the homes of pot smokers, yet does not end up actualizing his idea because he's afraid he'll be arrested, then he just cut himself out of a job. If an attractive woman chooses not to become a nude model or a stripper or a porn star or a prostitute because she is afraid of being arrested, then she just cut herself out of a job. Now, I know the word prostitution sounds horrible to you, and that's mostly because you associate that word with the media's interpretation, which is a lone woman creeping through a ghetto, infested with diseases and scraping around for a few dollars. Now, that's not necessarily what prostitution is. That's what prostitution has become because it's illegal and was forced into the shadows and ghettos by laws and moral condemnation. Prostitution doesn't have to look that way. And hey, if you're talking about the sex industry, there are plenty of ways to make money other than prostitution. Nowadays, any female can buy a webcam, set up an account, and literally get paid to masturbate in front of a camera. New websites allow people to scroll through endless web pages where they can literally watch and interact with a female or male and ask them to perform certain sexual acts on command. This is the world that is taking place, whether you like it or not, whether it's legal or not. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Oh my God, a world of career masturbators and drug dealers infiltrating society? How horrible! Well, first let me remind you that the primary reason you think this is horrible is because of your conditioning, as I mentioned earlier. Don't judge what is morally right or wrong on the basis of how you were indoctrinated as a child. Instead, determine what is right or wrong by the only logical way that right or wrong can be determined, by finding out what is in the self-interest of individuals, because self-interest is ultimately at the core of happiness and even our very consciousness. Second, let me remind you that these things are already happening. The only difference is that you don't really hear about them because they are either illegal or socially condemned because of arbitrary religious values that are sustained by known pedophiles. Now, I know that was a generalization, but the point is, these acts would happen anyway. But if they are illegal, or even just socially condemned by self-righteous people, then desperate individuals will still take part in these activities, but now they have to do them under the dark of night and hiding in the shadows to avoid unwarranted and mostly irrational criticisms and legal persecution. Just look at history. You ban alcohol, you get drug cartels and Al Capone. You repress private school girls, they turn out to be the horniest ones. Today, drugs are illegal. Well, not including alcohol, cigarettes, fast food, sugar, and side effect-filled prescription drugs. But if you look at the drugs that have been criminalized, they are the source of awful violence along the US-Mexico border that has taken the lives of an estimated 100,000 people. Keeping the black market illegal does not solve the problem. It just stuffs it into the shadows of alleyways and ghettos, always fleeing from the cops that you indirectly hire to prosecute people so that you can have an arbitrary and false sense of security. The black market, as a result, is nothing more than the hellhole within which ostracized individuals try to make a living while running from the cops because they're breaking arbitrary, pointless laws. The solution to the unemployment problem is to create jobs. A job, as stated earlier, is nothing more than the ability of a worker to offer value and receive compensation for it. Thus, any law that gets in the way of an individual and their ability to offer value to a willing consumer is a law that is literally destroying jobs. As long as individuals are not allowed to offer value for certain industries, like the drug and sex industries, then you are destroying jobs and contributing to the unemployment problem. The black market is the garbage can where otherwise productive and value-offering individuals are forced to operate within at the threat of police prosecution. Your irrational legal and moral standards are contributing to the detriment of society. Now, there's one more caveat that needs to be addressed. If, for example, you went ahead and made all drugs legal tomorrow, then that would leave the majority of prison guards, cops, and DEA agents out of their jobs. Also, if prostitution was made legal, and people realized that the sex industry does not have to be the nasty, dirty thing it has become thanks to governmental laws banning it, then most religious leaders would probably be fired too, for being so full of it. But you know what? This might be a good thing, actually, because I think that anyone who thinks drugs should be illegal, or that prostitution should be a crime, are almost always the same exact people who would change their minds if they tried the things that they despise so much. Give these DEA agents a little puff of pot, and these religious leaders a little sexual action, and they'll be converted in a heartbeat. At that point, they'll gladly quit their job so they can work within the newly legalized drug and sex industries, and you'll have fixed the whole unemployment problem all at once. Thank you.